Hollywood's golden age of blockbusters has hit a crisis point. For years, studios equated bigger budgets and familiar franchises with guaranteed profits, pumping out endless sequels, reboots, and spin-offs stuffed with CGI spectacles. But lately, audiences have grown tired. Theaters sit half-empty, writer strikes grind productions to a halt, and once trusted universes now flop. Streaming services promised endless content, but rushed releases sacrificed story and craftsmanship. From bloated superhero sagas to nostalgia-bait reboots, the industry's obsession with profit over passion is backfiring. Today, moviegoers demand more than explosions and franchise logos. They want fresh ideas, authentic characters, and scripts that resonate. Over the past 2 decades, there has been a clear correlation between movie budgets and box office returns, which has encouraged studios to invest heavily in familiar characters and franchises. Big studios have stuck to pumping out movies nobody really asked for, simply because they're tied to established properties that fans already recognize. Over time, this has stifled innovation and limited the emergence of new original storylines. But recently, this strategy seems to be backfiring. The movies being released are consistently failing to attract audiences to theaters, revealing themselves as bloated projects packed with excessive CGI. Take the Marvel Cinematic Universe, for example. It delivered some of the best films of the 2010s, known for great storytelling and strong, well-structured plots. Films like Iron Man, The Incredible Hulk, Thor, and Captain America built up to the first Avengers movie in 2012, which then laid the foundation for the expanding universe with newer characters and better storylines in movies like Doctor Strange and Black Panther. As the franchise grew, so did its budget, and the box office returns rose right along with it. In 2019, Avengers Endgame became the second highest-grossing film of all time, just behind James Cameron's Avatar. However, with the rise of streaming platforms, the MCU exploded. When Disney launched its own streaming service in 2019, the company rushed to produce more content to keep audiences glued to the platform. The result? The MCU began to decline, pumping out rushed superhero projects tailored for streaming. WandaVision, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Hawkeye, Ms. Marvel, She-Hulk, and more, all of which pushed a variety of agendas but lacked the depth that made earlier films successful. The COVID-19 pandemic only made things worse. With theaters closed worldwide, audiences had no choice but to watch from home. Studio executives saw this as an opportunity to flood streaming platforms with content, quantity over quality. Movies made for streaming are not always produced with the same precision and quality as theatrical releases. Over time, this drop in quality began to bleed into mainstream cinema, especially as the industry recovered from the pandemic. Studio executives had become overly reliant on streaming platforms. As movie budgets have generally skyrocketed, the line between theatrical releases and streaming films has become increasingly blurry. In the past, streaming movies were typically low-budget productions, often dismissed as just Netflix films. But that has changed in recent years. However, while the budgets for both theatrical and streaming content have gone up, the quality hasn't followed suit. In fact, it has plateaued, and not in a good way. So why is this happening? Well, despite the high budgets, the quality of movies has declined because the executives greenlighting these projects are often not producers, directors, or even creatively involved. They're business people whose main concern is profit and return on investment. As a result, massive chunks of the budget are funneled into certain sectors, especially heavy reliance on CGI and VFX, while sacrificing vital elements like the script. This is one of the main reasons Hollywood recently experienced its longest writers' strike in history. The fact that Hollywood executives even considered using AI to write scripts shows how little they value good storytelling. A script is the foundation of any movie, and sacrificing it in favor of flashy post-production effects is proving to be a costly mistake. Take Avatar: The Way of Water, for example. It arguably features some of the best CGI we've seen in recent years, but that's about it. There's little else to praise aside from the impressive computer-generated visuals. This has been the case with many franchises over the past decade. Executives and producers have shifted focus from storytelling to action-heavy sequences, fight scenes, explosions, and effects designed to keep viewers' adrenaline high, delivering constant dopamine hits. But that narrative is shifting. as even executives are starting to realize that audiences crave more than just loud CGI. They want compelling stories too. Now, CGI itself isn't inherently bad. In fact, good CGI requires experienced artists and a reasonable amount of time to produce something watchable. The issue is that these artists are not only rare but also expensive. Under the immense pressure from studios to meet tight deadlines, corners are often cut, resulting in unrealistic visuals. Unlike the practical effects used in previous decades, which felt more authentic, today's CGI-driven blockbusters often lack that realism. And in an era where authenticity is more valued than ever, these movies are set up to fail. CGI is also a major reason why superhero films have dominated in recent years, because nearly 70% of a superhero movie is CGI. And if the film happens to be part of an established franchise, the rest relies heavily on nostalgia, often paired with a mediocre storyline that banks on familiar characters rather than fresh narratives. And this has led to many box office bombs in the recent years. For the case of the Marvels, they even crashed when it came to character development. You see, the Avengers franchise became wildly successful, largely because of its strong character development. Each superhero came from an independently successful film, with their own established fan bases, so when they all came together, it felt like a unification of different fandoms into one massive event. But the Marvels flopped at the box office. Despite combining 3 franchises, it centered around characters from weak IPs, ones that had already failed to generate significant interest. Captain Marvel was only successful for a few key reasons. It was released at the height of the MCU's popularity, positioned between 2 of the highest-grossing MCU films, when anticipation was at its peak. At that time, fans were hyped about anything Marvel released. Also, the woke culture was just beginning to take shape, and audiences weren't as skeptical of those types of projects yet. But as backlash against woke culture grew, and with the releases of Ms. Marvel and WandaVision, both of which, along with Captain Marvel, formed the basis for the Marvels, things started to get shaky. Ms. Marvel and WandaVision were Disney Plus shows that failed to attract strong viewership. Pairing them with Captain Marvel, which was only successful due to its timing and context, and adding weak storylines, excessive CGI, and over-the-top feminist messaging, Marvel had created the perfect recipe for disaster. Now, female empowerment and feminism in film aren't inherently bad, but the way some studios present them feels forced, often portraying women as inherently superior to men. That narrative clashes with many cultural and societal norms, and that's what a lot of Marvel's female-led superhero movies seem to push. And it's not just limited to Marvel. The Woman King took that approach to another level. On the other hand, Barbie managed to convey female empowerment while staying true to the core identity of women. That's why it resonated so widely and became such a massive success. Filmmakers need to understand that female empowerment isn't about making women stronger than men. It's about showing women excelling in their unique roles within their authentic identities. That's what made Barbie work. Nostalgia hasn't just been milked in fictional franchises or cinematic universes, it's been used across genres. That's why we've seen so many reboots and sequels that nobody really asked for in recent years. Initially, nostalgic movies worked well for studios. Films like The Lion King, The Jungle Book, Godzilla vs. Kong, and Top Gun: Maverick generated hundreds of millions, if not billions, thanks to their nostalgic pull. But recently, that nostalgia machine isn't producing the same results. While the problem of nostalgia overload is definitely real, it's not the only reason for this trend. Studios became too focused on nostalgia and forgot about the other crucial elements that make a movie truly great. For instance, take a look at Indiana Jones and the Dial of Disaster. The film relied entirely on nostalgia. Yet, anyone who had watched Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull back in 2008 agreed that it should have been the final chapter, that the franchise needed to be laid to rest to preserve its legacy. But to everyone's surprise, a new sequel was announced, one that nobody asked for. Fans who had hoped the series was done for good were now faced with another installment, one that felt more like a studio cash grab than a meaningful addition. The dads who rushed to watch the film out of nostalgia because they grew up with the original franchise felt utterly robbed. They had to watch their favorite character get reduced to a shell of what he once was. The only thing people seemed to praise was Harrison Ford's commitment to reprising his role at 80 years old. Beyond that, the general consensus was that the film was a disaster. despite its massive $300 million budget, excluding marketing costs. With big-budget films like this, marketing alone can exceed $100 million. That's why studios typically need to double the production budget at the box office just to break even. And that's a major reason why modern movies have become so expensive to make. Part of the problem is that younger audiences have drifted away from traditional media. Studios now have to split their campaigns across both mainstream and social media to reach everyone. That's why you see people like Tom Cruise bouncing between TV stations while simultaneously going viral on TikTok and Instagram. But with marketing being so costly, studios have become desperate, willing to try anything to get fans into theaters. This desperation has led to misleading promotions. A good example is Dune, Part 1. Zendaya was heavily featured in trailers, posters, and press tours, giving fans the impression that she was a main co-star. But when people finally saw the movie, they were shocked by how little screen time she actually had. Many felt misled, if not outright defrauded. While social media has helped make some films successful, it has also hurt others. One wrong clip taken out of context during a press tour can be enough to spark a wave of negativity online. These short, selectively edited moments fuel trash talk from self-proclaimed critics on social media, most of whom can't even sit through a 10-minute interview. But their takes can go viral, and that kind of chatter can seriously hurt theater attendance. The most recent example is the live-action remake of Snow White. From the casting of Rachel Zegler, who is Latina, to Disney's controversial decision to use CGI dwarfs, the project was plagued by problems long before its release. Add to that the feuds and lack of chemistry among co-stars and Rachel Zegler's perceived diva behavior on social media, and it all quickly spiraled into a PR disaster. The controversy played out publicly, effectively self-destructing the project before it even hit theaters. Some of these issues led to multiple reshoots, which delayed the release date and significantly increased production costs. The rise in production costs over the past few years has directly contributed to higher ticket prices, and that's triggered another major problem: financial fatigue among moviegoers. People have started realizing that instead of spending the equivalent of a month's streaming subscription on a single movie ticket, especially for films already being labeled as mediocre, they can just wait a few weeks or months for the movie to drop on streaming platforms. This shift has led to a decline in theater attendance. The only real solution is to return to the drawing board and start investing in new, original content. Yes, fresh material is considered risky by some studio executives, but at this point, it's clear that audiences are exhausted by the same formulaic superhero flicks and uninspired reboots. They want something new, something bold, and the studios that deliver that are the ones that will win the future.